Long ball is going to go for a touchdown. The game's over. Webster Slaughter.
Metcalf will go for the score. Unbelievable.
45-40. Run, William, run. He's got blockers in front. 5. Touchdown. Joshua Cribbs turns disaster into a score.
Sight wants it all on this one for Logan, and he is there.
Jim Brown to the 30. Jim Brown is going to go in for another touchdown.
The Cleveland Browns select Baker Mayfield.
Wow.
It is Baker Mayfield.
I woke up feeling dangerous.
Hello, Cleveland. Welcome to a post-game edition of the 1085 Gridiron Podcast. I am your host, Anthony Joki. As always, I have my co-host, Jack McCurry, with me. I'm not going to ask how you're doing because I know how you're doing. But how you doing, Jack?
A little better than I was about 4 hours ago at this time. At that point, I felt like I just got punched in the gut really bad, but I'm okay now. So how are you? You had to experience that live and in person today.
Yeah, I'm the same with you. I came home, I took a short little nap, and I feel better. But let's just jump right into this because obviously we're going to have a lot to talk about here. What was your overall takeaway from today in that embarrassing 43-13 loss by the Cleveland Browns in their season opener?
It's just that, the people that really thought that this team was going to come out and just put on a star-studded, high-scoring affair should be ashamed. I mean, it was just a flat-out embarrassing loss. The Browns were not prepared for this game. I think that's safe to say. Just everything in general, it was pathetic. And hopefully, this is something that those guys can learn from. And if they did walk in there today and thought that they were just going to embarrass the Titans, that they need to come back tomorrow with a better mindset and realize that every NFL game is not easy. It's not a cakewalk. Even the Baltimore Ravens today, for instance, they beat the Dolphins by 49 points. I'm sure they worked their asses off this week, and I'm sure they didn't think that it was going to be easy. No game in the NFL is easy. You got to put the work in. You got to fight for 60 minutes, and I don't think the Cleveland Browns did that today.
Yeah, they fought for maybe the first 15 or so. Well, I take that back. The first half was okay. There were a lot of errors in the first half, and I thought that they were in a very good position starting the second half, only being down by 6 after the first half was such a disaster in terms of penalties and injuries and whatnot. And the way they came out in the second half, it looked like a completely different team. The Titans being able to move the ball at ease. Baker turned the football over 3 times. We'll talk about that more, but they look like a different team in the second half. The penalties, say what you want about, a few of them were questionable. They still had 18 of them, and that's the most by a Browns team since 1951. So they've been playing football for almost 70 years since then, and they haven't had that many penalties in the game. So on that front, it was embarrassing. They were extremely undisciplined. I know, when we're doing our predictions, you can't predict injuries and you can't predict penalties. And I guess from now on, we're going to have to take that into account because we did not expect the Browns to have 18 penalties in one game, regardless of a few questionable calls here and there.
Yeah, definitely. You just mentioned the penalties. That was some of the sloppiest football I've seen, and that's saying something because we've seen a lot of bad, sloppy football since 1999. And it's not just on the coaching staff; it's on the players too. Like, you got to be smarter than that. You got to be more mature, for instance, in situations like that with some of the penalties. But some people say, well, this is why they needed to play in the preseason. Well, that might be true, but it's also just being smarter in the situations and in the moments, and we'll get into it, but just all these penalties. And you mentioned 1951 was the last time we had this many penalties in a game. That was with a Paul Brown team. And before that, the last time we had 15 penalties or something like that in a game was a team led by Bill Belichick back in 95. And that was even before Art Modell announced the move. So, hopefully Freddie Kitchens learns from this. Hopefully the entire team learns from this. And they put a game like this behind them and come back this week and work harder and want to prove to everyone that they are as legit as the talk was all offseason. And they come back next week against the Jets and put on a show that we all expect them to put on this year.
You could argue the most egregious one that hurt the Browns was Greg Robinson retaliating after he was knocked down and kicking a Tennessee Titan in the face while he was down. That led to him getting ejected. And from there, the downward spiral began for the Browns. Jack, obviously, you never want to see a player get ejected. How crucial and how debilitating was that penalty from Greg Robinson that led to his ejection?
Oh, I honestly think that was the turning point of the game, because then you had to insert Kendall Lamb, who I think for the majority of the preseason was playing right tackle, backing up Chris Hubbard. He has experience at left tackle. So then you had to put him in. Then Lamb gets hurt. So then you have to take Hubbard from right tackle to left tackle. And then you had to insert Jordan McRae, who's only been with the team for a week. I mean, it completely shuffled everything. Baker had to, was under more pressure, had to run to extend plays more. It had just really changed the outset of the game. And it opened everything up for the Titans defense. They were allowed to be more physical, and, they were already being physical, and it just, everything unraveled. And, Kitchens said it. He said they're not going to tolerate that stuff. And it was a boneheaded move by Greg Robinson to do that. I don't care that Kenny Vaccaro pushed him over. You got to be smarter than that. And that's not just on Robinson. It's on, plays like when Jermaine Whitehead hit Marcus Mariota out of bounds on that roughing the passer call early in the game. It's going back to Myles Garrett with his slap, which he's lucky he didn't get ejected for that, hitting the Titans offensive lineman in the head. I mean, these guys have to be smarter. I'm not saying you need to run away from battles and situations like that, but you had to be smarter in situations.
Yeah, absolutely. You always want to play whistle to whistle, but you have to be extremely smart, especially in today's NFL where the quarterbacks are pretty much untouchable. You can't do anything extra after the play. So, it is what it is. It's a poor, sloppy, embarrassing performance. It started with the penalties. It was compounded by injuries to the offensive line to the point where they had to warm up a couple defensive players to be a backup tackle or backup offensive lineman if needed. Jack, where does this offensive line stand after week one? About half of it's still standing. Greg Robinson was ejected, but Lamb was hurt, and another one left, right? From what I saw, there was another lineman that left.
No, it was just Lamb left, and then obviously Robinson got ejected.
Okay. I was trying to pay attention as close as I could. I couldn't remember if another guy left the game or not. But, where does this O-line stand after one game, after an extremely poor performance? You saw Baker take off a lot, and you had to think that he was kind of running for his life back there at some points of the game.
I mean, it's definitely the biggest question mark on this team as it stands right now, and you just will have to wonder, what is going to happen. Obviously, we have to wait and see how serious Lamb's injury is, and then you have to wonder, well, what are they going to do at offensive tackle for depth? I know you mentioned to me during the game, how much is it going to cost for us to get Trent Williams? I don't think Trent Williams can come in right now and, fix the problems immediately. First of all, he hasn't participated in training camp, so who knows what kind of shape he's in. And then you have to get him up to speed with our playbooks and the protections and all that. So he's not going to be a quick fix, and maybe, you got guys like Corbett and Teller. Corbett has experience at tackle, although it was in college. He doesn't have the length, but you have to see what you got out of him at some point. He was the 33rd pick in last year's draft. You got to see what he can bring you. If he has to play tackle, get him ready for that. I seen somebody suggest, well, they could always put Batonio at left tackle and get rid of Robinson. Yeah, I don't think you can make immediate changes so quickly. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, but the tackle play really needs to increase. I didn't think that Cush played all that bad from what I saw. I'm going to have to go back and rewatch it again, but I thought the tackles were the biggest issue today. So, it's one game. There's going to be tons of overreaction, but we'll see how this all shakes out. But clearly, the tackles are the biggest issue, and if Lamb's down, the depth took another big hit as well.
Yeah, the interior of the line, Batonio, Treader, and Cush, I thought did an okay job. I'm not going to say they did a good job because the entire O-line played garbage as a unit, but after Greg Robinson left, Lamb getting hurt, it just dropped down even more so performance-wise. That entire unit was the cause of all the problems. Baker was rushing things. I was somewhat surprised that they were still able to run the ball after all the changes to the offensive line. That will be my one of two positives from the game today was the way that they were able to run the ball. The other was Gillian punting. He did a nice job in his debut, but the way they were able to run the ball, I was surprised about. But the O-line needs to get pass protection. They need to work on that. They need to clean that up. And you look at the guys that the New York Jets have on defense next week, they're going to have that looming in their head as well. So they have a lot to clean up this week. Hopefully they can correct the penalties, play a cleaner version of football, and we'll go from there. Next week is not going to be easy. It's going to be a challenge, especially when you have the bright lights on you on Monday Night Football. That's never easy. Let's take a look at the defense, and it really fell apart in the second half. Did we sleep on anybody on the Tennessee Titan offense that we kind of didn't expect to go? Because we talked about Corey Davis a little bit and how it's his second year. We talked about the free agent sign of Adam Humphries, but I guess we kind of completely slept on A.J. Brown.
Yeah, we definitely did. And, I think a lot of people did because when they looked at, the Ole Miss receivers, everybody was focused on DK Metcalf. But in all reality, coming out of the draft, A.J. Brown was the more polished receiver. And it showed today, right here in his NFL debut, made some great catches. He had three catches on 4 targets for 100 yards. Had a really great ball thrown to him down the sideline by Mariota early in the game, and Denzel Ward had a tough time wrapping him up and tackling him, and it helped set up the Titans for a field goal early in the game, and he played well. Delaney Walker, coming off injury-plagued season last year where he missed the majority of the season, he came back, had 2 touchdowns, and then Derrick Henry. I mean, he was a tank in Alabama, and he's finally coming on as an NFL running back. Last year he had a great season, and today he backed it up with 159 all-purpose yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I was surprised about how big of a factor Derrick Henry was, especially with that 75-yard touchdown, that screenplay that went for a touchdown. But we talked about how Mariota kind of had to play ball control offense, and they did a good job of that. What did you think of his overall performance and how the Browns were really not able to get pressure on him. They had 4 sacks, but it seemed like it was very sparing, the pressure that they were able to get on him.
Yeah, I mean, they got some pressure on him. They sacked him 4 times, but, Mariota's mobility, you don't get as much pressure because he's able to escape and maneuver around and whatnot. I thought he had a great game. Romo and Nance talked about it, how they had to push the ball more downfield, and they did that today. He's starting to get a full, solid cast of weapons for him on offense. Obviously, they added Humphreys and Brown at the receiver position. Corey Davis was quiet, 0 catches on 3 targets. They tried to utilize Dion Lewis, but the Browns were able to limit him. Obviously, having Walker back helped. And then to use Henry in the receiving game, which I don't think anybody was expecting him on that screenplay. And then, the blocks were great. And then Henry was able to turn on the jet somewhat for a guy that's around 240, 250 pounds to run away on a 75-yard touchdown. That was surprising. But Mariota played well. Obviously, this is going to be a big season for him because he's on his contract year. So, the biggest thing with him is, can he stay healthy all 16 games? Because not only is he auditioning for potentially long-term for the Titans, but around the league as a potential bridge starter or as a long-term backup.
What did you think the Titans were able to do schematically on offense to prevent the Browns' pass rush from almost being non-existent today?
I think they added more personnel, much like the Browns did last year in the second half of the year, using, double tight ends. They had, obviously, Henry's a solid pass blocker. They had multiple tight ends. They threw out Smith out there. They threw Pruitt. So they added up front to make up for the lack of missing Lawan and Pomfil. So, that helped big time. They was able to give Mariota a little time to make some plays. Obviously, it helped up front when Henry was running the ball. So it bought them time. And if you get Mariota time, and obviously his receivers can get down the field and get open, it's going to, cause problems for the defense.
Yeah, from what I noticed, they were definitely chipping a lot. The guys on the outside, Vernon and Garrett, they were doing a good job of blocking with wide receivers as well. So, they did a very good job schematically. And, for a first-year offensive coordinator, I forget what the guy's name was, but for it being his first NFL game, they called a pretty darn good football game and took the Browns completely out of their element on defense in terms of their pass rush. So kudos to them. They did a very good job schematically on offense. And, they were just a better football team. You hate to see teams getting boat raced, especially when it's the Browns, by 30 points in the opening week. But in the NFL, it happens. I mean, look what the Ravens did to the Dolphins today. I'm sure we'll touch on that at some point this week. But, Jack, when you look at this, what needs to happen going forward for this Browns team, what do they need to do most this week to get ready for the New York Jets next week?
They obviously need to work on the protection, because when you look at that New York Jets defense, regardless of the fact that they blew a 2-touchdown lead today against the Buffalo Bills, they have some guys up front, and there's no doubt about that. Whether it's Leonard Williams, trying to think, who's the guy that they drafted this year? Quinnen Williams. They added C.J. Mosley. They got Jamal Adams. They got guys that can come at you in a variety of ways on the blitz. And we obviously know their defensive coordinator, Greg Williams. He knows how bad that offensive line is, because he played against it in practice. And, not much has changed. Obviously, Zeitler's gone. So, that's something that Greg Williams will attack. But they have to find ways to keep Baker protected. And also, Baker's got to find ways to get the ball out a little quicker. I mean, they need to work on that as well. That's something that was effective last year, and it didn't seem like you've seen it that much today. So obviously that's something that, Freddie Kitchens and Todd Monken are going to work on. I know that they want to move the ball vertically downfield, but all in all, you got to get the ball out quickly, because obviously now with Baker, and we'll talk about the injury here in a second, you cannot afford to get him hurt, because if he gets hurt, this season's going to be a complete wash. And I know a lot of Browns fans are going to be disappointed if number 6 goes down.
Yeah, he suffered a bruise on his wrist. X-rays came back negative, so hopefully it doesn't do too much to hinder him. Moving forward, it is on his throwing hand / arm, so hopefully he'll be okay. Some ice will hopefully heal that up, and that'll go away by next Monday. I don't really see it being any kind of long-term injury.
Yeah, I would hope not, but he took a beating today. Cameron Wake, who doesn't seem to be aging, got to him. Harold Landry got to him. There was a couple of times Baker was wincing. It looked like he landed on his arm a couple times. I'm sure it hurt. Obviously the wrist is going to be an issue. Hopefully it's not a long-term issue. But, you got to find a way to keep him protected. I think that's like when you draft a quarterback number 1 overall, we have all the weapons now. It's time to find him some protection. We've seen it. Tim Couch, David Carr, Deshaun Watson the first couple years. You let these guys get buried into the ground, you're never going to see their true potential. And I think Arizona needs to do that with Kyler Murray, although he looked awesome today in his debut. You got to surround your quarterback with protection first and foremost. Don't worry about the weapons. The weapons will come to you. You got to build that offensive lineup, because you got to keep your prized possession, which is the franchise quarterback, healthy and upright.
Yeah, not only did Baker suffer an injury and Kendall Lamb as well, but Dontrell Hilliard also suffered an injury. He had a concussion. So they might need to make a move at running back for next game. I don't know if they'll go into the game with 2, with Nick Chubb and Dearness Johnson, but I'm sure we'll find that out at some point this week.
Yeah, they may just elevate Elijah McGuire, who they signed to the practice squad. He has NFL experience. He was with the Jets last couple seasons. So they may elevate him, release somebody, obviously, to fit him onto the roster. But we'll see. Everybody deals with concussions differently. Some guys, it lingers for a while. Some guys are back. So obviously that's something we'll watch throughout the week.
Yeah, and in completely other news, Josh Gordon just scored a touchdown. So there's that. But we'll talk about that later. Any final thoughts today before we get on out of here?
Just 2 things. One, I thought Gillian punted well. I know that was one of your positive takeaways. And then Austin Seibert, you better get your kicking together. It may have been nerves, but we cannot afford, even though we got crushed today, you have to make these extra points. You were drafted by Dorsey because he thought you were the best prospect available at that point, and you made this roster because they thought you could make the kicks. So get your shit together and start making your kicks, or you're going to be out of here pretty quick, because Browns can't tolerate that crap.
I have one more positive for today, and it had nothing to do with what went on the football field. But there's all this talk about mobile ticketing and get there early, and you want to be in line early, so you don't have any problems getting into the game. They completely redid the outside where all the metal detectors are. There were probably about twice as many on the southeast side as there were last year. So getting into the game at around 12:45 was not a problem at all. So I recommend getting there at least an hour before kickoff, and you'll have no problem getting into the game. Now, their efforts did work, because when kickoff came, that stadium was 95% full. unlike years past. So I'm sure in 2 weeks on Sunday Night Football, when the Rams are there, everybody's going to be drinking all day and all that kind of stuff, tailgating all day. So be sure to get there on time and definitely show out for that Sunday Night Football game, because this week is going to be a tough one against the Jets on the road, and then that primetime game at home. I mentioned on our preview show that if they lost this week, there's a possibility, they could start off the season 0-3, and that's when you would find out what this team is really made of. So hopefully this week they get a win. If not, that Sunday Night Football game, that's going to be a must-win. So be sure to show up for that one and get there early for sure. All right, Jack, before we get out of here, anything else?
Just one more positive thing. I thought the tackling was really good today. Last year they struggled they missed a lot of tackles. I didn't see any real issues, minus Denzel Ward. His effort, he made a good effort on that A.J. Brown attempted tackle, but other than that, I didn't have any issues with the tackling today. I don't know how you felt watching it live, but
I thought that there was, and I'll have to go and rewatch it here soon. I thought that they were out of position a few times to make tackles, so it didn't constitute missed tackles, but I just thought that a few times that they were out of position. I'll definitely have to go back, watch the film, and double check what I saw, and I feel like I might be right on coming to that conclusion.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I feel like they were out of placement at some points, but not as bad as last year when Schober and Collins and Kirksey were missing a lot of tackles. They might have been out of placement, and that's obviously something that can be fixed. But I thought the tackling was much better than it was last year.
Yeah, we'll find out for sure. They're going to have a tough one to tackle next week with Le'Veon Bell. Then you have the powerful Rams offense after that. So the tackling is going to get tested this year. They have a lot of skill position players that are really good that they're going to be going up against. So the tackling better be on point for sure. Anything else?
That's it, man.
All right. We'll be back probably tomorrow. I know what we forgot to do. Monday Night Football preview. Do you want to talk about that, or do you just kind of want to let it slide by for this week?
Just let it slide.
Okay. Based on our 1085 pick'em thing, we're both rooting for the Saints tomorrow, and I'm rooting for the Raiders. You're rooting for the Broncos. So, we'll see who wins Week 1. Right now, I'm up by a few points. So, it's definitely a fun thing that we got going on here. All right.
Oh, definitely. And New England is currently winning thanks to Josh Gordon. He scored the opening touchdown. So, thank you, Flash, as always, for brightening up our Sundays.
Oh, yeah. Especially after that loss today. That's just what you want to hear. Former Browns doing well.
No doubt.
All right, plug what you got so we get out of here.
Just follow me on Twitter at JMcCurryCLE. Although the account will be a little silent for the next 2 days, I'm taking a little hiatus just so I don't have to deal with any of the crap that the media and some of the hot take fans we got are going to ensue over the next few days.
You're telling me you're not going to wait with bated breath to hear what Colin Cowherd has to say tomorrow?
I could care less what that cow turd has to say.
All right, then. You can always follow me on Twitter at Anthony Jokey. I should be posting film stuff today or tomorrow. I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. Be sure to follow the podcast on Twitter and on Facebook at 1085 Gridiron. You can find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. Even though we lost today, we got killed, I'll still leave you with Go Browns.